Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I hope at some point in the future, when you're meeting in person, I'll be able to join you again. I've been asked to talk about financial education in the U.S. My goals with this brief organization are to describe financial education in educational settings, as well as in the public and private sector, and to briefly identify some challenges that we still face. This picture of an interstate in a rural area is what I wish financial education in the U.S. looks like today. It would be great if we had clear consensus about what financial education is, what we're intending to teach, what our objectives are, with some appropriate deviations from these central themes for specific audiences or specific circumstances. Instead, I think this is descriptive of financial education, with little clear consensus about what it is, what our desired outcomes are, and how to go about measuring those outcomes to determine what we're trying to achieve. There probably is a bit more consensus about financial education in our public school settings, but financial education is offered in a variety of different educational settings in the U.S. The Council for Economic Education produces a report every 2 years, and in their 2020 report, they indicated that 21 of the 50 U.S. states, plus the District of Columbia, now require high school students to take a course in personal finance. That's a net increase of 4 states over the previous report from 2 years ago. I think if you looked at this, then you would get the idea that we're doing a great job of teaching personal finance in our public school settings. But in fact, I would argue that in K through 12, the lesson or the conclusion is less clear. And I'll use as an example my state, Georgia, that has state standards that are frequently praised. Our state standards for K through 12 public school students include personal finance throughout the grades. Our high school students are required to take a semester of economics. Personal finance must be 1/5 of that content, and it must be represented on the required end of the course test. So you would probably conclude that students who graduate from high school in Georgia have learned at least some personal finance in schools. But in fact, I estimate that as many as 1/3 of the children in Georgia have never experienced this education because they were homeschooled, in advanced placement economics, or in private schools. And this doesn't even consider that up to 7% of children in Georgia drop out before they ever reach high school. We don't know very much about personal finance education in colleges and universities, although the U.S. Financial Literacy and Education Commission has recommended that such instruction be mandatory. Research that I and my students have done has clearly demonstrated that financial education is present in many colleges and universities, but the approaches are quite varied. Financial education is alive and well in the U.S. public sector. This is important for many reasons, but largely because we know K through 12 education cannot adequately address many of the important decisions that we make in adulthood. We also know that just-in-time education is more likely to stick. We're more likely to use and retain knowledge gained in relation to important financial decisions, and we're more likely to make important financial decisions once we leave school than as children. Just to highlight a few examples of activities in the U.S. in the public sector, Junior Achievement is quite an old organization, but they now have a strong financial education mission. Invest in Girls is a relatively new organization. Its mission is, quote, to usher in the first generation of financially literate girls and change the way girls interact with money, end quote. Their approach includes a curriculum, time with role models who work in financial services, and visits to financial services firms. America Saves, from the Consumer Federation of America, is unique in that its goal is changing attitudes, not knowledge. This social marketing campaign's goal is to encourage low to moderate income households to save, reduce debt, and build wealth. My Classroom Economy is one of many programs created to provide learning activities for use in schools. We have a number of programs that are targeted to specific audiences that are deemed at risk. The National Foundation for Financial Education offers Cash Course for use with college students. Retire Friday is a financial education initiative designed to improve opportunities for Hispanics to build wealth for retirement. There are financial education programs for prisoners. North Dakota offers financial literacy courses in all 5 of its state's prisons. Other programs have been created to provide financial education to survivors of domestic abuse and human trafficking, for the disabled, and for homeless populations. Financial education is also found in U.S. workplaces, by one estimate in more than 1/2 of U.S. organizations. Financial education also is widely present in the private sector. Many financial services firms in the U.S. are engaged in financial education, often producing curriculums such as hands-on banking from Wells Fargo and practical money skills from Visa. Both EverFi and the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants have created popular financial education materials that are largely available online. Entrepreneurs have entered the financial education arena as well. The Khan Academy teaches a variety of topics, including personal finance concepts, using video instruction that incorporates a digital whiteboard. Gamification is becoming popular in financial education, with games designed to teach different concepts, including debt management, retirement planning, and saving. Both state and federal agencies are involved in financial education in the U.S. At the federal level, the U.S. Financial Literacy and Education Commission brings together the 20 federal agencies that engage in some way with financial education. The U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau also has a unique financial education mission related to consumers' use of financial products. While there's not much published information about financial education efforts in state governments, a Google search confirms that state treasurers often are involved. Some states, including Wisconsin, have state councils to coordinate financial education activity, and many public libraries have been involved in financial education. The U.S. approach to financial education is far from perfect. We don't have consensus about what we're trying to teach, much less what the desired outcomes are. Resources to evaluate program outcomes are scarce, and I don't just mean money. We need more individuals with expertise and greater consensus about reliable ways to measure outcomes. Educational materials often are not keeping pace with the changing market. For example, it's much easier to find education materials about checks and credit cards than about debit cards and mobile payment systems, even though we know the latter are popular among young adults. Some topics are overrepresented, topics such as credit, because well-funded financial services firms with incentives to broaden their customer base have produced educational materials focusing on these topics. Other equally important topics, such as insurance, are underrepresented in our financial education materials. A brilliant presentation would end with a clear plan to tackle these challenges. I don't have that for you today. But I do think that solutions must come from coalitions made up of each of the sectors engaged in financial education. And my personal hope would be that the solutions would be characterized by coordination, not competition, and specialization in, for example, funding, curriculum development, expertise in current market trends, evaluation, and research. Thank you very much for the opportunity to prepare this presentation for you, and I hope to engage in conversation with you via email in the future.